Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast Special Edition show. It is my 2020-21 college basketball season's predictions podcast. I'm going to go through every conference, predict the winner of each conference, and go down the list of my predictions of placement finish. And then I'll predict the player of the year, the coach of the year, and for the bigger conferences, the freshman of the year. We're going to start in the AAC. In first place, I have the Houston Cougars. Obviously, they have some pieces coming back. It's a good team. Kelvin Sampson has had a ton of success over the past couple of years. So, I expect them to go out and win this conference. So that's a pretty much a safe bet. Caleb Mills is a good player that's coming back. SMU, I have in second place. Tim Jankovic, great coach. Kendrick Davis coming back. Tyson Jolly coming back. Third place, I have the Memphis Tigers. I think they take a little bit of a hit with losing Precious Achiara to the NBA. Musa Sissy's coming back. Lester Quones is coming back. Actually, Musa Sissy's a freshman. Never mind. Landers Noli coming back. Or coming to Memphis. And they also have DeAndre Williams coming in as well as a transfer. Penny Hardaway, I think, is under so much pressure. Cincinnati, fourth place. I like the Cincinnati team a lot. I think that they could be a surprise entrant in the tournament, potentially. Keith Williams is back. He is the leader of this team. Fifth place, I have Wichita State. Tumultuous offseason with the Greg Marshall stuff. Now they have an intern coach in there. In terms of players coming back, Tyson Etienne coming back, and they have LTK Gilbert coming in as a transfer. Sixth place, I have Tulsa. Tulsa's a team that I think is under some pressure here to do something. Frank Haith is still there. I think he's a hot seat coach. In terms of players coming back that can help them, Brandon Rachel. That's it. Seventh place, I have South Florida. That's a team that a lot of people think they could get better. David Collins is a senior now. Eighth place, I have UCF. That's another team that I think has a shot to surprise. CJ Walker comes in as a transfer. And Colin Smith is now a senior. Ninth place, I have Temple. It's just sad how this season for them really has fallen apart. It's sad that that program really has taken a tumble. Nobody really important coming back for them that could be an all-conference selection. 10th place, East Carolina. They have Jaden Gardner coming back. Maybe they could surprise people, led by Gardner. And then 11th place, Tulane. They have a new coach in there now with the former Georgia State coach, if I'm not mistaken. He's the coach at Temple now. Or I'm sorry, Tulane, Ron Hunter. In terms of notables coming back, they're kind of like in a rebuilding situation, so it's just unfortunate for that team. My player of the year is Caleb Mills from Houston. He's going to lead the Cougars this year to an AAC title. Coach of the year, Kelvin Sampson. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country, one of the more underrated coaches in the country, getting a lot out of that team. Freshman of the year, Musa Cease of Memphis, who we talked about earlier. The ACC. In first place, I have the Virginia Cavaliers, who have a lot of people coming back. Most notably, Sam Hauser coming in as a transfer. who I think will really help that team a lot. In second place, I have the Duke Blue Devils. A lot of turnover there with Duke. Mike Krzyzewski's still there, obviously. They're just not as good as the Duke teams from the previous couple years, and they had like Zion Williamson and R.J. Barrett, and even before that with Marvin Bagley. Third place, I have the Louisville Cardinals. That's a team that tends to overachieve year in and year out, and I'm a big fan of Chris Mack. Fourth place, North Carolina. They have Garrison Brooks back. A lot of people expect a big bounce-back season from North Carolina if COVID didn't become a thing in March in terms of canceling things left and right. North Carolina would not have made the tournament last year, so there's pressure on Roy Williams to have a bounce-back season. Florida State at number 5. They lose Devin Vassell and Patrick Williams, so I think they take a step back. Sixth place, Miami. I like this Miami team. The coach, Jim Larrañaga, gets a lot out of his players, and I think that they'll sneak in to that sixth place spot in the ACC. In seventh place, I have the Syracuse Orange. I'm not a big Syracuse believer this year. I think that Syracuse is a team that is like a hit or miss in terms of will they make the tournament or not. Number 8, I have NC State. There's some people that think they could be the surprise team of the conference this year. They have a good coach. Georgia Tech at 9, Josh Pastner, I think, is a coach that's in trouble. 10, Clemson. I think that Clemson's a team that's in a rebuilding situation. 11, Notre Dame. Mike Bray knows that he's in a rebuild year. That program, I think, is a couple years away from back to being a contender. Virginia Tech at 12. They have a good coach in Mike Young. Maybe they can surprise some people early on. 13, Pitt. That team was a surprise team early last season and kind of just fell apart. 14, Boston College. Jim Christian, to me, is a coach that's been on the hot seat for like 3 or 4 years now. And 15, Wake Forest. You know that that's a rebuilding situation there, so they're not relevant. Player of the Year, Sam Hauser, Virginia. I think that he's going to go in there and really improve their offense and lead them to an ACC title. Coach of the Year, Chris Mack, Louisville. I think he gets a lot out of his teams, and I think that he gets respect from the media, so I think that Chris Mack will be your Coach of the Year in the ACC. Freshman of the Year, Jalen Johnson, Duke. He's going to be a focal point in that Duke offense this year for Mike Krzyzewski. And I think the media, as I mentioned, likes to give Duke some credit. So I think Jalen Johnson will win that award. Next up is the AEC. This conference isn't really all that special. In first place, I have the Vermont Catamounts. I just think that despite the loss of Anthony Lamb, they'll still be the best team in that conference. Second place, I have UMBC. They have a good coach, and I think that he gets a lot out of his guys. Third place, I have New Hampshire. Fourth, Stony Brook. Fifth, NJIT. Sixth, UMass Lowell. Seventh, Albany. Eighth, Hartford. Ninth, Maine. And 10th, Binghamton. Player of the Year, I'm going to go with Steph Smith from Vermont. He's going to be the focal point of that team, replacing a little bit of the Anthony Lamb production. And Coach of the Year, John Becker of Vermont, who is a great coach out there and I think deserves a bigger opportunity. Atlantic Sun. I have winning this conference the Liberty Flames. They've been a good program over the past couple of years. Richie McKay's done a great job there. Second place, I have Lipscomb. They have a really solid player in Ashawn Azadullah. Third place, I had Stetson. Fourth, North Alabama. Fifth, Florida Gulf Coast. Sixth, North Florida. Seventh, Jacksonville. And eighth, Bellarmine, who's a new team in the Atlantic Sun this season. A couple of their other teams have kind of went away. And then Kennesaw State I have in the basement of the conference. Player of the year, I'm going to go with Ashan Azabdullah from Lipscomb. I think that it's going to be between them and Liberty for that conference title all year long. I think Liberty's a deeper team, but as Abdullah, I think will have the best season between teams between players on those two teams. And Coach of the Year, I'm going to go with Richie McKay of Liberty, who I think will lead his team to the big dance. The Big East. In first place, I have the Villanova Wildcats. Villanova has a lot of big-name players coming back, including Colin Gillespie and Jeremiah Robertson Earl, Justin Moore, Jermaine Samuels. So I think that they are in a really good position to have a special year this year. Second place, I have the Creighton Blue Jays. Marcus Zegarowski is still there, and he should lead them to big things, as well as Mitchell Ballack. Third place, I have UConn. I think that Dan Hurley and those boys are going to be motivated for the first time in a long time in terms of relevancy, and I think that they will surprise some folks this year. James Bouknight's a good player. RJ Cole's really good. So I think that they're poised for a big year. Fourth place, I have Marquette. I think that Marquette is a really solid team in the Big East. They have some nice players on their team, including DJ Carden, who is a transfer, and then Dawson Garcia is a solid freshman coming in. Fifth place, I have the Seton Hall Pirates. I think they take a step back after the loss of Miles Powell. They still have Bryce Aiken on that team, who came in as a transfer. And then Sandru Mamushakeli from last year. He's a senior. So Bryce Aiken's transfer and Mamu should really keep that team relevant. Sixth place, I have the Butler Bulldogs. Aaron Thompson still there. They have some other good players. Seventh place, I have the Providence Friars. I don't love Providence this year, but I won't be stunned if they make the tournament. Dave Duke Jr. is still around. He's a senior. Eighth place, I have Xavier. Paul Scruggs is still there, and they should be competitive. Ninth, I have St. John's. Julian Champagne, sophomore. Vince Cole comes in as a transfer. Maybe Mike Anderson can get that team to overachieve a little bit. And had the season not gotten canceled for the tournament, St. John's could have made it. I feel like they had a good year last year, or at least made it somewhat interesting. Georgetown, I have 10th. Pretty much a rebuilding situation for Patrick Ewing. I almost said Mitchell Ballack. They have some nice players there. And in the cellar, as always, DePaul. Charlie Moore's still there. But that's pretty much all they have. Player of the Year, Colin Gillespie of Villanova. I think that he's going to be the leader of this Wildcats team and lead them to big things. Coach of the Year, Dan Hurley, UConn. I think that this is going to be the Huskies' best season since their national championship season. And Freshman of the Year, Dawson Garcia of Marquette. Big South. I have Winthrop winning the conference, 2nd UNC Asheville, 3rd Gardner-Webb, 4th Campbell, 5th Charleston Southern, 6th USC Upstate, 7th Radford, 8th High Point, 9th Longwood, 10th Hampton, 11th Presbyterian. Player of the Year, DJ Burns of Winthrop. Coach of the Year, Pat Kelsey of Winthrop. Big Sky. First place, Eastern Washington. Second place, Montana. 3rd, Northern Colorado. 4th, Southern Utah. 5th, Montana State. 6th, Sacramento State. 7th, Weber State. 8th, Portland State. 9th, Northern Arizona, and 10th, Idaho State. Player of the Year, Jacob Davison of Eastern Washington. Coach of the Year, Shantay Legans of Eastern Washington. The Big Ten. This is going to be an interesting conference this year. I think that a number of teams can win this conference. I have winning this conference the Wisconsin Huskies. The Badgers. Whoops. Yeah, so the Badgers I have winning the Big Ten. I think that they are a really good team that has a lot of depth, led by Nate Rivers and Micah Potter. And I think that they'll lead them to a Big Ten title, in which would be a really close race. Second place, I have the Iowa Hawkeyes. Luka Garza obviously leads the way there. Jordan Bohannon returns as well. Third place, I have the Illinois Fighting Illini. That's a team some folks have winning the conference. I do not. They have a good freshman coming in Adam Miller. Kofi Cockburn returns as a sophomore. Ayu Dosamu's there as well, so they're pretty deep. And they have a really, really good coach in Brad Underwood. In fourth place, I have the Michigan State Spartans. Sparty's underachieved a little bit over the last couple of years. Obviously, Tom Izzo's still around. Rocket Watts and Joey Hauser, the transfer for Marquette, come in and lead the way. Aaron Henry's still there as well, and that's big for that team. Fifth place, I have the Ohio State Buckeyes. They obviously have been a contender over the past couple of years. Seth Towns comes in as a transfer. He'll help them. And Chris Holtman's a good coach. Sixth place, I have the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. They really had a great year last year. Had the season not gotten stopped, they would have certainly made the tournament as well. Ron Harper Jr. returns. He'll lead the way for them. In seventh place, I have the Indiana Hoosiers. Archie Miller has yet to really break through at Indiana. They have Jackson Davis coming back, and they expect him to make a jump. And then Christian Lander is a good freshman that's coming in this year as well. Eighth place, I have the Purdue Boilermakers. They're a pretty solid team. Trevion Williams returns for them, which is big. In ninth, I have the Michigan Wolverines. Franz Wagner's coming back. They also have Isaiah Livers coming back as well. And Juwan Howard returns as well after rumors that he was going to jump. 10th, the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Richard Pitino is still their coach. Marcus Carr's back, which is big for that team. Liam Robbins Jr. comes in as a transfer. 11th, the Maryland Terrapins. A bit of a rebuilding situation there for Mark Turgeon. 12th, the Penn State Nittany Lions. They had a good year last year. They would have made the tournament had the season not gotten stopped. In 13th, Northwestern, the Wildcats. Chris Collins is still there. I think he's a coach on the hot seat. That's a rebuilding team. And in the cellar, another rebuilding team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers with Fred Hoiberg there. Player of the Year, Luka Garza, Iowa. If there wasn't any doubt, I love Luka Garza. He's a star. He could have went to the NBA, and he would have potentially been a lottery pick. But no, he's back. Coach of the Year, Greg Gard at Wisconsin. I have them winning the conference, and I think this conference is absolutely loaded. And I think Greg Gard will get the honors for having his team at the top. Freshman of the Year, Adam Miller of Illinois. I think the Illini are going to be really good, and I think Miller will be a big part of it. The Big 12. Another really good conference that is very top-heavy. In first place, I have the Baylor Bears. Obviously, the return of Jared Butler is huge for this team. Mark Vitale is back as well. And obviously, they have a great coach in Scott Drew. In second place, I have the Kansas Jayhawks. There are rumors and rumblings that they were going to get banned from the postseason, but it looks like they won't. Marcus Garrett's coming back. Ochai Agbaji coming back. Tyon Grant Foster comes in as a transfer. In third place, I have the West Virginia Mountaineers. This is a team that Bob Huggins tends to have overachieved year in and year out. Oscar Tshiebwe returns. He was the freshman of the year last year. That is really big for that team, and they have some other starters coming back as well. In fourth place, I have the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Chris Beard, I think, is the best coach in college basketball in terms of the hot young coach, but not necessarily the best ever. Obviously, that's Mike Krzyzewski and Jim Boeheim, and you could argue Ray Williams there too, as in terms of the college basketball GOATs. Oh, and Tom Izzo as well. But Chris Beard is up and coming. He's an absolute star in the coaching world. Nimari Burnett is a good freshman that he has coming in. Terrence Shannon returns. Marco Santos Silva is a good transfer that's coming in. Fifth place, the Texas Longhorns. Oh my goodness. I think if anybody was saved from the coronavirus pandemic in terms of a job, it was Shaka Smart. I'm convinced that guy would have been fired had not been for the coronavirus pandemic. And he's under pressure to go on a run this year. Greg Brown's a newcomer that's coming in as a freshman. He'll help them. Matt Coleman returns as a senior. In sixth place, I have the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They got banned from the postseason this year. Cade Cunningham is a freshman that's coming in, the projected number 1 overall pick in next year's NBA draft. In seventh place, I have the Oklahoma Sooners, who obviously have been a good team under Lon Kruger for a long time and tend to overachieve. Austin Reeves comes back for them, as well as Brady Manick. In eighth place, the TCU Horned Frogs. They're a team that's in a bit of a transition right now. In ninth place, I have the Iowa State Cyclones. Rasir Bolton's coming back. They really don't have anything else coming back. And in the cellar, I have the Kansas State Wildcats, who are in a bit of a rebuild right now. Alrighty, the player of the year, I'm going to go with Jared Butler of Baylor. Obviously, Butler is one of the big reasons why Baylor would have been a top 2 seed in the tournament last year. He's back this year, and I think he'll be the best player in the Big 12. Coach of the year, Bob Huggins, West Virginia. He gets a ton out of his teams year in and year out, and I think they'll come darn close, as well as Kansas, to win the Big 12 title this year. And I think that Huggins gets a lot of respect from the media. Freshman of the year, Cade Cunningham, Oklahoma State. If there wasn't any doubt, as I mentioned, he's the projected number 1 overall pick in next year's NBA draft. And I think teams are going to be tanking for him in the NBA. The Big West is an interesting conference this year. At the top, I have UC Irvine. Brad Green's back. I think that Russell Turner is going to get his team to play hard as he always does. UC Santa Barbara in second. They're the biggest competition, the Irvine, this year. They have a good roster. Third place, I have Cal State Bakersfield. Fourth, UC San Diego. Fifth, UC Davis. Sixth, Hawaii. Seventh, Cal State Northridge. Eighth, Cal State Fullerton. And ninth, Cal Poly. CAA. At the top, I have Hofstra, the Pride. Jalen Ray is a player that's coming back for them. He's a very solid player. Second place, I have Towson. Pat Scary's got a good team this year that I think could unseat Hofstra. Third, Northeastern. Bill Cohen gets a lot out of his teams every year. Fourth, Delaware. Fifth, Drexel. Sixth, Charleston. Seventh, Elon. Eighth, UNC Wilmington. Ninth, James Madison. And 10th, William & Mary. Player of the year, Jalen Ray of Hofstra. Really good player, as I mentioned at the top. And then Coach of the Year, Pat Scarry of Towson. And by the way, Big West Player of the Year, Brad Green. And Coach of the Year, Russell Turner, both of UC Irvine. Conference USA. First place, I have Western Kentucky. I think Western Kentucky is a solid team in that conference. Obviously, Charles Bassey's a name that everybody knows. Tavon Hollingsworth's a good player, too. Carson Williams. Kenny Cooper coming in as a transfer. and they have a good coach in Rick Stansbury. In second, I have North Texas. They have a really good player in Javion Hamlet, and they have Mardrez McBride coming in as a transfer. In third place, I have the Marshall Thundering Herd. Andrew Taylor's a good player. Tavion Kinsley's good as well. Fourth, I have Louisiana Tech, who's another team that I think could surprise in this conference. Caleb Ludo is still around, redshirt senior. In fifth, I have Old Dominion. Malik Curry returns for them. He's a senior. Sixth, I have UAB. Seventh, UTSA. Eighth, Charlotte. Ninth, Middle Tennessee. 10th, FAU. 11th, FIU. 12th, UTEP. 13th, Rice. 14th, Southern Miss. Player of the year, I'm going to go with Javion Hamlet of North Texas. I talked about him at the top when I talked about this conference. I think Hamlet will be the best player in the conference and potentially help North Texas unseat Western Kentucky as the top team in that conference. Coach of the year, Rick Stansbury. He always gets a lot out of his guys at Western Kentucky. The Horizon League, I think, is another interesting league this year. In first place, I have Wright State. They have a solid roster led by Loudon Love and Tanner Holden. And they have a transfer coming in Tim Fink. Second, I have Youngstown State, who has a good player coming back in Darius Quinsbury. In third, I have Northern Kentucky. Fourth, Purdue Fort Wayne. Fifth, Cleveland State. Sixth, Detroit. Seventh, Robert Morris. Eighth, IUPUI. Ninth, Green Bay. 10th, Oakland. 11th, UIC. And 12th, Milwaukee. Player of the year, Loudon Love of Wright State, who I think is the best player in the conference. And then Coach of the year, Scott Nagy of Wright State, who I think is going to get credit for his team doing so well. The MAC. The MAC's always interesting in college basketball. And this year, I have the Buffalo Bulls winning the league. They have some good players coming back, such as Javon Graves, Janethan Williams, and Josh Mabala. In second place, I have the Toledo Rockets. Marion Jackson coming back for them, which is big, and Seth Milner coming in as a transfer. Third place, I have the Bowling Green, Mean Green. Justin Turner's back. He's a great player. Daquan Plowden coming back as well. Fourth place, I have Ball State, who I think could surprise. Ismail El Amin is there. Jerron Coleman back as well. And Reggie Jones comes in as a transfer. Fifth place, Ohio, the Bobcats. Jason Preston is still there. Ben Vanderplas is still there as well. Sixth, I have Akron. Seventh, Kent State. Eighth, Miami of Ohio. Ninth, Eastern Michigan. 10th, Northern Illinois. 11th, Central Michigan. And 12th, Western Michigan. Player of the year, Justin Turner of Bowling Green. He's the best player in the conference, and I think he'll win it. Coach of the year, Jim Weitzel at Buffalo. And I think Buffalo have a good year in the MAC. The Metro Atlantic, so the AA MAC, as I like to call it. In first place, I have Siena, who has a great player coming back in Jalen Pickett. Second place, I have Monmouth, who has a really good coach in King Rice. And I think he'll get a lot out of his players, as he normally does. Third place, St. Peter's. Fourth, Canisius. Fifth, Niagara. Sixth, Iona and Rick Pitino. Seventh, Fairfield. Eighth, Quinnipiac. Ninth, Rider. 10th, Marist. And 11th, Manhattan. Player of the year, Jalen Pickett of Siena, who I talked about earlier. And the coach of the year, Carm Mascherello at Siena. The MEAC. A note on the MEAC. Bethune-Cookman is not playing their last season in the MEAC, and they're moving to the SWAC next year. And the MEAC has divisions this year, which is different. First in the conference and first in the North Division, I have Norfolk State, who has probably the best roster in that conference. Second place, and then second in the South, NC Central, who has a good player in CJ Kaiser. Or, I'm sorry, they're in the South. Yeah, not the Central. Third place overall, second in the North, Howard. Fourth overall, second in the South, NC A&T. 5th overall, 3rd in the South Florida A&M. 6th overall, 3rd in the North, Morgan State. 7th overall, 4th in the North, Coppin State. 8th in overall, 5th in the North, Delaware State. 9th overall, 4th in the South, South Carolina State. And then 10th overall and 6th in the North, Maryland Eastern Shore. Player of the Year, C.J. Kaiser of North Carolina Central. And Coach of the Year, Rob Jones of Norfolk State. The Missouri Valley Conference, which is always a fun conference every year. And first I have Northern Iowa, led by their best player, A.J. Green, who a lot of people like and is one of your classic Missouri Valley players. And they also have Austin Fife coming back and Trey Burrow as well. And in second place, I have Loyola Chicago. They have Cam Krutwig coming back, as well as Keith Clemens and Tate Hall. They have a loaded team coming back. In third, I have Bradley. Elijah Childs coming back is huge as a senior. And then Sean East is a good transfer coming in. Fourth, I have Indiana State, who has a good player coming back in Tyree Key. He's a senior. Jake Lavrina coming back as well. Tobias Howard's a good transfer coming in. Fifth place, Drake. Tremel Murphy coming back. Roman Penn coming back. Tank Hemphill's a good transfer coming in. Sixth, Valparaiso. Seventh, Missouri State. Eighth, Southern Illinois. Ninth, Illinois State. 10th, Evansville. Player of the Year, A.J. Green of Northern Iowa. Coach of the Year, Porter Moser at Loyola Chicago. The Mountain West Conference, I think, is a sneaky good conference this year that I think has a real shot of being a multi-bid league. In first place, I have the San Diego State Aztecs. They were really good last year. I think they're going to be really good again. Matt Mitchell back. Terrell Gomez comes in as a transfer. Nathan Menshaw back as well. Second place, I have Utah State. They have Nemes Keita coming back, which is huge for that team, and Justin Bean. Third place, I have the Boise State Broncos, who I think could surprise in this league this year. Abu Kabag back. Derek Alston back. Fourth place, Colorado State. They got David Roddy back. And they got Isaiah Stevens back as well. Fifth place, UNLV. David Jenkins back. Bryce Hamilton back. Oh, David Jenkins is actually a transfer. That's my bad. Sixth place, Fresno State, who tends to surprise every so often. Orlando Robinson's back for them. 7th, Nevada. 8th, Wyoming. 9th, New Mexico. 10th, Air Force. 11th, San Jose State. Player of the Year, I'm going to go with Nemes Keita of Utah State. When he's healthy, he's the best player in the conference. I'm going to go with Keita. Coach of the Year, Brian Dutcher at San Diego State. The NEC. In first place, I have Fairleigh Dickinson. They have a good player coming back in Jaleel Jenkins. Greg Caranda is a good coach as well. Number 2, I have St. Francis of Pennsylvania. 3rd, Mount St. Mary's. 4th, LIU. 5th, Wagner. 6th, Merrimack. 7th, St. Francis, Brooklyn. 8th, Bryant. 9th, Sacred Heart. 10th, Central Connecticut. Player of the Year, Jaleel Jenkins of Fairleigh Dickinson. Coach of the Year, Greg Caranda of Fairleigh Dickinson. OVC is another fun conference that I think is always overlooked. In first place in that conference, I have the Belmont Bruins. In second place, I have Murray State. Belmont, obviously. Nick Buzinski back. Grayson Murphy back as well. And then Murray State has Tevin Brown back, as well as Daquan Smith and KJ Williams. So they're going to be battling it out. Austin P I have in third. Terry Taylor back as a senior. Carlos Perez back. 4th, Eastern Illinois. 5th, Eastern Kentucky. 6th, Tennessee State. Jacksonville State, 7th. 8th, Tennessee Tech. 9th, Morehead State. 10th, Tennessee Martin. And 11th, Southeast Missouri State. The player of the year, Nick Muszynski of Belmont. I talked about him earlier. He's the best player in the conference right now. Although you can make a case for a couple other players. And Coach of the Year, Casey Alexander. I think he's done a great job replacing Rick Byrd. So I think that he'll get this honor. The Pac-12, I think, is a really interesting conference. I think this is a more open conference than people think. And the team that I have winning this conference this year is a surprise. The UCLA Bruins. They were great last year at the end of the season and would have made the tournament had not been for coronavirus. Chris Smith is back. Tiger Campbell back. And obviously Mick Cronin is an awesome coach. At second, I have the Oregon Ducks. Chris DeRate coming back. They have Eugene Omori coming in as a transfer. Will Richardson's back as well. Dana Altman knows what he's doing. Third place, I have these Arizona State Sun Devils led by Remy Martin. Obviously, Bobby Hurley's one of the best coaches in America. Josh Christopher's a good freshman coming in. In fourth, I have the Arizona Wildcats. That's a team that I think is in a little bit of a transition period. The coach is still there. Sean Miller. Terrell Brown is a good transfer that's coming in, and I think that Brown will help them. Fifth place, I have the Stanford Cardinal. They have Oscar Da Silva coming back. He helped lead them to a surprise year last year. Zaire Williams is a good freshman they have coming in. In sixth place, I have the USC Trojans. Evan Mobley is a really, really good freshman coming in this year for the Trojans. Seventh, I have the Utah Utes. Timmy Allen coming back for them. In eighth, I have the Colorado Buffaloes. I was blanking on their name there. McKinley Wright's back. He's an awesome player. In ninth, I have the Washington Huskies. Quade Green coming back for them. In 10th, I have the Oregon State Beavers. Ethan Thompson back for them. In 11th, I have the Cal Golden Bears. Matt Bradley's back for Cal. And in the basement, I have the Washington State Cougars. And Washington State's bad pretty much every year in college basketball. Player of the Year, Remy Martin, Arizona State. He's a stud, and I think he'll lead the Sun Devils to a top 3 finish in the conference. Coach of the Year, Mick Cronin, UCLA. I think they win the conference outright, so Cronin will get his due. Freshman of the Year, Evan Mobley at USC, and he'll help lead them to perhaps the NCAA tournament. The Patriot League. In first place, I have Colgate. They have a good player coming back in Jordan Burns. Second place, I have Boston University, who had a good year last year. Third, Navy. Fourth, Lafayette. Fifth, Bucknell. Sixth, Loyola of Maryland. Seventh American. Eighth, Lehigh. Ninth, Army. And 10th, Holy Cross, who's always at the bottom. Player of the Year, I'm going to go with Jordan Burns of Colgate. And Coach of the Year, I'm going to go with Matt Langle of Colgate. The SEC, I think, is going to be interesting this year. Obviously, it's top heavy, and then it's a little bit of a drop off. In first place, I have the Tennessee Volunteers. I think they're going to be really good, led by Yves Pons and John Fulkerson. Jared Springer's a good freshman coming in. So I think Jaden Springer will really help them, and I like Rick Barnes a lot. Second place, I have the Kentucky Wildcats. John Calipari and company I have in second. BJ Boston coming in as a freshman. Oliver Starr coming in as a transfer. He'll help them, as well as Terrence Clark coming in as a freshman. He'll help them too. In third place, I have the Florida Gators. Keontae Johnson's back. He'll help them. Scotty Lewis back as well. Fourth place, I have the LSU Tigers. Traydon Watford back for them. Javon Smart back. Fifth, the Alabama Crimson Tide. John Petty back. Jaden Shackelford back. In 6th place, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. They're in a bit of a transition. I really like their coach, Kermit Davis. He normally gets a lot out of his teams. 7th, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Moses Moody's a good freshman that's coming in. He'll help them. In 8th, I have the South Carolina Gamecocks. Frank Martin's a good coach. He'll get a lot out of that team. 9th, the Missouri Tigers. They really don't have anybody really that special coming in or coming back. 10th place, the Texas A&M Aggies. 11th, I have the Auburn Tigers, who are, I think, heading for a tumultuous year despite Sharif Cooper coming in. And they banned themselves from the postseason. 11th, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. 13th, the Georgia Bulldogs. And 14th, I have Vanderbilt, as they are normally in the bottom. Player of the year, I'm going to go with Yves Pons of Tennessee. I think he's going to lead the Vols to big things this year. Coach of the year, Rick Barnes at Tennessee. I think they finished atop the conference. So I think that they will give Barnes the benefit of the doubt. And in freshman of the year, B.J. Boston at Kentucky. And I think he'll be the next Kentucky lottery pick. SoCon, which is an interesting conference. That's normally a very top-heavy conference. In first place, I have Furman. I really like this Furman team. Bob Ritchie's a really good coach. They have Noah Gurley and Clay Mounts coming back. Mike Bothwell coming back as well. Second place, I have UNC Greensboro. They got Isaiah Miller coming back as well as Kayshawn Lagney and Caleb Hunter. Third place, I have Wofford. Storm Murphy's coming back. He's a senior. Preston Parks is a good transfer that's coming in. And Mises Jones is back as well. Fourth place, East Tennessee State. They were really good last year. They have a couple transfers coming in. Ty Brewer and Ladarius Brewer. Fifth place, Mercer. They got a good transfer. Naftali Alvarez coming in. And then Ross Cummings is a good senior that they have. Sixth place, Chattanooga. Seventh, Western Carolina. Eighth, VMI. Ninth, Stanford. 10th, the Citadel. Player of the year, I'm going to go with Isaiah Miller of UNC Greensboro. I think he's the best player in the conference. And I think that he'll help them to challenge Furman this year. And then coach of the year, I'm going to go with Bob Ritchie of Furman. Next up, the Southland. In first place, I have Stephen F. Austin, who's pretty much been the class of this conference over the past decade. Gavin Kinsville's a good player. Kyle Keller's done a good job replacing Brad Underwood. Second place, Abilene Christian. Third, Nichols. Fourth, Central Arkansas. Fifth, Sam Houston State. Sixth, Northwestern State. Seventh, New Orleans. Eighth, Lamar. Ninth, Texas A&M Corpus Christi. 10th, McNeese. 11th, Southeastern Louisiana. 12th, Houston Baptist. And 3rd, Incarnate Word. Player of the year, I'm going to go with Gavin Kinsville of Stephen F. Austin. Coach of the year, Kyle Keller of Stephen F. Austin. The SWAC. First place, I have Texas Southern. They have a really good player coming back in Michael Weathers. Second, Southern. Third, Grambling. Fourth, Jackson State. Fifth, Prairie View A&M. Sixth, Alcorn State. Seventh, Alabama A&M. Eighth, Alabama State. Ninth, Arkansas Pine Bluff. And 10th, Mississippi Valley State. Player of the year, I'm going to go with Michael Weathers of Texas Southern. He'll help them win the conference. And then coach of the year, I'm going to go with Dante Jackson at Grambling. He's gotten a lot out of that team over the past couple years in that conference. And I think that he'll get the respect from the media. Summit League. First place, I have the South Dakota State. They have a good player coming back in Douglas Wilson. I like their coach, Eric Henderson. He's done a great job there. Second place, North Dakota State. Third place, Omaha. Fourth, South Dakota. Fifth, Oral Roberts. Sixth, North Dakota. Seventh, UMKC. Eighth, Denver. Ninth, Western Illinois. Player of the year, I'm going to go with Douglas Wilson. And coach of the year, I'm going to go with Eric Henderson, who I talked about earlier. Sun Belt. I think this is a more interesting conference than people think. In first place, I'm going to go with Georgia State, who is a really good player, and Kane Williams. And they've been a perennial contender in this conference over the past 5-10 years or so. Second, I'm going to go with the Texas State Bobcats. that's another interesting team this year. They have Isaiah Small coming back. He'll help them. Third, Little Rock. A lot of people like Little Rock to win the conference. They have Marquise Nowell coming back, as well as Rhett Moying. Fourth place, UT Arlington. That's a preseason darling. Seems like every year. David Azori's coming back for them, as well as Shada Wells, who is a transfer. Fifth, Coastal Carolina. I like Coastal Carolina this year. They have Devontae Jones coming back. Sixth, Louisiana. Seventh, Appalachian State. Eighth, South Alabama. Ninth, Georgia Southern. 10th, Arkansas State. 11th, Troy. 12th, Louisiana Monroe. Player of the year, Kane Williams of Georgia State. Talked about him earlier. Coach of the year, Terrence Johnson of Texas State. I think that Johnson will help the Bobcats get the second place. He'll get the credit. Next up, the WAC. First place, I have New Mexico State, who has owned this conference over the past half decade or so. Jabari Rice is a really good player. Second place, Grand Canyon. They've been a good team in this conference over the past couple years. Third place, Texas Rio Grande Valley. Fourth, Utah Valley. Fifth, Cal Baptist. Sixth, Seattle. Seventh, Dixie State. Eighth, Tarleton State. Those are two new teams in that conference. And in ninth, Chicago State. Player of the year, Jabari Rice out of New Mexico State. And Coach of the year, Chris Jans at New Mexico State. The WCC, I think this league is a better league than given credit for again this year. In first place, obviously, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Mark Few is one of the best coaches in America. Joel Ayayi coming back. Corey Kispert coming back. Drew Tim coming back. Jalen Suggs is a good freshman coming in. Second place, the BYU Cougars. I think that Mark Pope has done a great job there over the past couple of years. They have some good players coming back. Alex Barcelo, Matt Harms, who comes over from Purdue. Third place, St. Mary's. St. Mary's has been very relevant over the past couple years in the WCC. Randy Bennett is a great coach. They have Matthias Toss coming back and then Jade Mullins coming in as a freshman. In fourth place, Pepperdine. They have Colby Ross coming back, which is big for them, and Kessel Edwards Jr. coming back as well. In fifth place, I have Santa Clara, who was a surprise team in this conference early on in the season, but fell apart last year. Joseph Varkic is back for them. In sixth place, I have San Francisco, the Dons. They got Jamari Boria and Khalil Shabazz coming back. Damari Milstead coming in as a transfer. In seventh place, I have Pacific. They have Gervais Green coming back for them. Eighth place, Loyola Marymount. Marymount's an interesting team. They have Eli Scott coming back as a senior. Ninth, San Diego. And in the cellar, Portland. Player of the year, Drew Tim of Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga has a lot of candidates for this on their team, and I'm just going to go with Tim. Coach of the year, Mark Pope at BYU. I think BYU comes in second in this conference this year, and I think Pope will get the credit. Freshman of the year, Jalen Suggs at Gonzaga. All right. My first bracket projection of the year. I'm going to be doing this on my regular podcast throughout the season. And without further ado, here we go. And by the way, the tournament this year is supposed to be held at a singular site at Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. So I just still did it West Region, South Region, East Region, Midwest Region. Number 1 overall seed, and in the West, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. In second place, or the second overall seed, 1 seed in the South, the Virginia Cavaliers. The number 3 overall seed, the number 1 seed in the East, the Villanova Wildcats. And the number 4 overall seed, the number 1 seed in the Midwest, the Baylor Bears. Your 2 seeds, In the East, you have Kansas, Midwest, Wisconsin, West, UCLA, South, Creighton, 3 seeds, South, West Virginia, Midwest, Tennessee, West, Iowa, East, Duke, 4 seeds, Midwest, Oregon, West, Louisville, South, Kentucky, East, Texas Tech. In the 5 seeds, Midwest, UConn, South, Illinois, East, Michigan State, West, Marquette. 6 seeds, East, Iowa State, Midwest, Arizona State, South, North Carolina, West, Houston. 7 seeds, Midwest, Texas, East, San Diego State, South, Rutgers, West, Seton Hall. 8 seeds, South, Indiana, West, Florida State, East, Florida, Midwest, SMU. 9 seeds, West, Butler, Midwest, BYU, South, LSU, East, Arizona. 10 seeds, Midwest, Stanford, West, Minnesota, South, Oklahoma, East, Michigan. 11 seeds, Midwest, St. Louis, West, Utah State, South, Belmont, East, Miami. 12 seed play-in game. In the West, USC, Richmond. In the East, play-in game in the 12 seeds, Boise State, St. Mary's. And then the rest are auto bids. Obviously, there's an extra at-large this year with the Ivy League bowing out for the season. So the other two 12 seeds that are autos is in the South, Northern Iowa, and the Midwest, Furman. 13 seeds. In the Midwest, New Mexico State, East, Buffalo, South, Western Kentucky, and in West, UC Irvine. 14 seeds. In the East, Georgia State, South, Stephen F. Austin, Midwest, Hofstra, West, South Dakota State. 15 seeds. Midwest, Wright State, East, Vermont, South, Liberty, West, Eastern Washington. And then your 16 seeds in the South, Winthrop, in the Midwest, Siena, and in the play-in games, Colgate and Fairleigh Dickinson in the East, and then in the West, Norfolk State and Texas Southern. All right, miscellaneous predictions, Final Four. Villanova, Virginia, UCLA, Wisconsin. National Championship. Villanova over Virginia. I think that would be an awesome game if that were to happen with 2 great teams and 2 great coaches in Jay Wright and Tony Bennett. And obviously, the subplot that nobody's talking about is that would be a matchup between our previous 2 national champions. Because don't forget, we didn't have a national champion last year. If anything, the national champion, who knows who would have it been. So I guess that would just be an NA in the record books, as coronavirus pretty much stalled it. So yeah, Virginia pretty much is still your reigning national champion right now. And then obviously Villanova was the champ 3 years ago. National Player of the Year, Luka Garza out of Iowa. I love Luka Garza. He's a star. He'll help lead the Hawkeyes to a top 2 finish in the Big Ten. National Coach of the Year, Scott Drew at Baylor. I had Bob Huggins winning the Big East Coach of the Year, but Drew, I think, will get the credit from the national media because I think the Big 12 is absolutely loaded, led by Baylor and Kansas and West Virginia and Texas Tech. And I think that Drew will get the rightful credit for it. And the National Freshman of the Year, I'm going to go Cade Cunningham out of Oklahoma State, even though that Oklahoma State is banned from the postseason this year. Miscellaneous predictions. I'm going to say that Jim Christian is finally fired from Boston College. Bound to happen. And I think that Boston College will turn around and maybe they'll go after Chris Jans out of New Mexico State. The Mountain West Conference will outbid the AAC and the Atlantic 10, but not combined. I think 2 out of the A10, 2 out of the AAC. I think those 2 leagues will be down this year. And the MWC will outbid them this year for the field of 68. Rick Pitino, year 1 in Iona, is a dud. I have them finishing in a mere 6th place in the Metro Atlantic this year. Jim Boeheim announces retirement. I think this will be Jim Boeheim's last season at Syracuse. and he'll retire at the end of the year. A Major 6 coach jumps schools. I think there's going to be a Major 6 coach that has a great year this year, and a big opening comes up, and they take it. And a good example of this would be Brad Underwood at Illinois. Maybe he goes to Syracuse after Jim Boeheim retires. Maybe Roy Williams retires at North Carolina. But yeah, I think a big-time Power 5 or Major 6 coach will jump to a bigger school. And right now I'm going to say Brad Underwood to Syracuse is that prediction. All right, there you have it, my 2020-2021 college basketball season predictions. Obviously, tomorrow we'll preview all the games, and I'll project lines and stuff and winners. And obviously, it's going to be a fun season, and hopefully COVID doesn't ruin the entire thing. So I hope you guys have a great night, everyone.